Hi, my name's Hannah and I'm from Yoga Course. I'm going to guide you through a 45-minute yin class today. For this class, you'll need a bolster and 2 bricks, but when you're ready, we'll meet in a seated position on the mat. So we're going to start the class today in Shavasana. So for this pose, if you want to, you can grab your bolster and you can place this under the legs for a little bit of support, but we'll start to make our way down onto our backs. Rest the arms either side of the body and then just start to close down the eyes. Think about softening onto your mat. Start to let go. We're just going to spend the first few moments of the class kind of bringing ourselves mentally into the space and into the present moment. So give yourself a second just to switch off distractions. And that could be anything. So maybe you're thinking about an important meeting or event that's coming up. Maybe you're creating a list in your head of everything that you need to get done by the end of the day. You might be thinking about something that's already happened, but for the next 45 minutes, try and switch all of that off and instead start to guide your awareness to your breath. So just start to notice your breaths as they happen, as they come and go. Feel the softness of your breath in and the softness of your breath out. Start to create a connection with your breath. By guiding your awareness to your breath, you're bringing yourself into the present moment. Notice the sensations as the breath fills the body and the sensations as it leaves the body. Although there's quite a lot of emphasis on the breath and the present moment in yoga, I find that yin can offer us time to kind of sit with our thoughts. So if your mind starts to wander, just know that that's okay, as long as it's wandering and not racing. You can always come back to the breath anytime that you need it. The stillness that you feel now in this moment, try to take it with you as you practice the postures. Know when to go deeper into a pose and when to pull away. Really listen to your body. So with that being said, we're going to start our physical practice now. And we're just going to begin by bringing both knees into the chest, wrapping the arms around the shins. Start to take a gentle rock from side to side. So give your spine a bit of a massage into the mat. We're going to bring some movement back into the body. You might want to wiggle the fingers, the toes, roll the ankles and the wrists. Then we're going to come into our first yin posture. So let's take the soles of the feet down onto the mat for this. You can use the bolster as well, but we'll start by taking the soles of the feet onto the mat. Bring your feet together and then let the knees fall out either side of the body so the soles meet together in the center. We're coming into sleeping butterfly. So this pose is a hip opening pose, and this might start to feel a little bit uncomfortable, and there's lots of things that we can do here. So we can grab our blocks. We can take the blocks underneath the legs for a little bit of support just to stop the knees from falling too far. Another option is with the bolster. So we can take the soles of the feet onto the bolster instead and let the knees fall out either side. Final option, if this is just too uncomfortable, you can start to slide the feet a little further away from your body, and that should reduce some of the pressure on the hips. We're going to spend a little bit of time here. If you haven't practiced yin before, it's a practice that is passive. So you want to start to let go into each of the poses. And we spend a longer period of time in each of these poses, and there's several different reasons for that. The first one being that when we passively stretch the body, it takes the body about, on average, 30 seconds to a minute and a half for our body to truly relax into the pose. And then any time after that is kind of working time. And then the other reason is when we passively stretch the body, so when we let go, we start to work into the deeper connective tissues. So the fascia, tendons, ligaments, all those kind of areas. When we actively stretch, so when we pull ourselves into a pose and the muscles switch on, we start to work into the more superficial part of the muscle. When we come into each of these poses, the main thing that you want to remember is we want to find comfort. So you might not feel the deepest stretch straight away, but you definitely will by the end of the time that we're here. Use the props to support your body, find comfort in each of the poses, and then start to let go. You've reached your halfway point in this pose. So if you wanted to adjust, now would be a really good time. You could maybe take yourself a little bit deeper into the pose, maybe pull away if it's starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable. But for this last few minutes, we're going to take the hands onto the stomach and just spread the fingers nice and wide. Take a deep inhale through the nose. Start to fill your stomach with the breath and feel it rise up into the hands. With your exhale, just let go of the breath. Feel the stomach soften back into place. We'll take a few more rounds just like that. So inhale, fill the stomach with your breath, feel it rise. And then exhale to let it go. Take 5 more just like that. Once you finish your final round of breath, allow it to come back into its natural rhythm. You've got just 1 more minute here. We're going to start to make our way out of the pose now. Every time that we come out of one of these poses, we want to make sure that we're being really gentle with our body. So carefully start to draw the knees back up to center. Maybe sliding any props away from underneath you. And then we'll start to carefully bring some movement back into the body. So all of us are probably going to be feeling slightly different things now and maybe feeling it in slightly different places. So it's likely that we're all going to want to do slightly different things. Feel free to move in a way that feels good for you right now. You could windscreen wipe the knees from side to side. Maybe hug the knees back into the chest if that feels good, or lengthen the legs up towards the sky. There is no right or wrong. Just do what feels good here. Start to move the body. Bring some movement back into the joints. Perfect. And when you're ready, and there's absolutely no rush, but when you are ready, we're going to bring the soles of the feet back down onto the mat, this time about hip width apart. We're going to come into supported bridge. So I would just make sure that any props that you want to use are just to one side where they're easy to grab. There we go. So yeah, taking the soles of the feet down onto the mat, about hip width apart, we're going to place the arms down beside us, palms facing down. Start to squeeze the glutes, begin to lift the hips away from the mat and up towards the sky, peeling the back away from the mat here as well. And once you get to a point that feels good, this is where we'll start to grab our blocks. So there's lots of things that you can do. First option is with blocks. We can take the block underneath the lower part of our spine to support the back if that feels good, and it can be on any setting. So if you wanted a little less lift, you could take it on its lowest setting. If you wanted a little bit more, you could lift it up to the medium, the second setting, or of course, if you wanted even more lift, you could take it to its highest. But you want to make sure that it's on the lower part of your back, so your sit bones are just kind of hanging over the edge of the block. We can do the same thing with our bolster. So we can slide the bolster just gently underneath the body, allowing the lower back to rest completely on whatever support that you're using here. With the arms, you can kind of do whatever feels best. You can rest them down beside you. You could place the hands to the stomach or the hips, maybe even reach the arms up and overhead if that feels good. And then if you do want even more, you can start to lengthen your legs out onto the mat. And again, just bear in mind that all of this can be changed and adjusted if it starts to feel uncomfortable or maybe you want more. The best thing to do is to find comfort. As soon as you find comfort, you will be able to relax into each of these poses. It's better to take maybe a minute or so just to find that place of comfort rather than settling straight away into a pose that doesn't feel good and then struggling through the rest of the minutes. But once you find that place of comfort, that point that feels good in the pose, start to let go, settle into stillness. And this is your reminder that there is no right or wrong in yoga. There are only poses that feel good and then poses that feel not so good. And if something doesn't feel good right now, there is always something that we can do to change it and make it feel better. Forget about alignment, forget about the shapes, and instead focus on the sensation that is being created. So if it's not good and it's painful, that means it needs to be changed. It doesn't matter if your shape looks like mine. As long as it feels good and you're feeling the sensations in the right places, then you're where you need to be. Maybe you start to think about softening areas like the jaw, the shoulders. Let go of any tension in the legs. You could even let the knees knock in together if that feels better. Just notice the weight of the body against the mat, against the props that you're using. Notice that gentle pressure between the back of the body and the earth. You've reached your halfway point in this pose. We're going to spend just 1 more minute here. This is your last minute. Let's start to make our way out of the pose. So press down through the feet as you slowly lift the hips away from whatever support you're using. And then we're going to gently slide that support from underneath us. Carefully roll down through the spine, allowing your sit bones to meet the mat. And it's really important after a pose like bridge pose that we take a moment just to bring the spine back into neutral. So spend a second here. Just take a couple of breaths. I know the urge is to move straight away. Then when you're ready, start to bring that movement back into the body. So maybe hugging the knees into the chest. That will probably feel really good after a pose like bridge. It just brings the spine into the opposite direction. Maybe take that rock from side to side. Again, windscreen wipe the knees if that feels good. You could take the feet as wide as the mat and let the knees knock in together. There really is no right or wrong. Just do what feels good for you in this moment. Start to tune into all of those different sensations and different areas of tension and work into those areas. So the next pose that we're going to come into is going to be a twist. So for this one, I would pop your props just to the right side of you, just so that they're there if you need them straight away. But for this pose, we're going to take the arms out into a capital T shape. If this doesn't feel good, then you can always bend the elbows and come into a cactus arm instead. But we'll take the knees all the way over to the right side of the room. If it feels good, you can take your gaze over to the left. But we're just going to rest the knees either onto a bolster for a little bit of support, or if you want a little bit less support, then you can grab your block and rest the knees onto a block instead. Another option here as well is if you find that one knee tends to hover above the other, popping a block in between the knees might feel a little bit more comfortable. But as always, we're just going to start to find some stillness within the pose. So start to let go. Start to feel the body soften onto the mat. Allow yourself to find a place of comfort within the pose. We're making our way towards the halfway point of the class. So now might be a really good time to come back to your breath. Start to notice those inhales and those exhales again. Maybe you start to notice where in the body you feel the breath. So it could be the chest. Maybe you're breathing into the diaphragm, so the rib area. Or you might be breathing quite deeply into the stomach. Maybe you start to notice different sensations. So that gentle tickle on the tip of the nose from the rush of air as you breathe in and out. The slight cooling from your breath in and the slight warming from your breath out. Just come back to your breath. We've reached our halfway point on this side, so As always, if you wanted to take this a little bit deeper, maybe remove some of the support, or if it's becoming a little bit uncomfortable, you can add more. Gently start to guide the knees back up to center. Then just take that moment to move the body in any way that feels good for you. When you're ready, we're going to take that over to the opposite side. So if you want to use your props, then place them over to the left side of you this time. So if you're using your bolster or your blocks, we'll bring the knees back in towards the chest. We're going to take the arms back out beside us, whether that's capital T shape or cactus arms. And then we'll release the knees over to the left side of the room this time. Gaze can go over to the right. What you might find as you come into this pose on the opposite side is you feel some slight differences. That's completely normal. We tend to have a more dominant side, so some things might feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit less. You might find that you need extra support on this side, or again, a little bit less. Maybe you feel it in slightly different places. These are all normal things. Honor your body and do what feels good in this moment. Treat each side as a brand new stretch. So yin is quite different to a lot of the other mainstream styles that you've probably practiced before. Yin is a Chinese style of yoga, so it originated in China, whereas a lot of the mainstream styles of yoga that we practice in the Western world come from India. So the philosophy is completely different, the approach is completely different. It is a completely different practice. In Chinese philosophy, it's believed that an energy or a life force lives within our body, and that energy is called qi. And the idea is that when we come into stillness, we start to encourage qi to flow around our body, and it flows around the body in channels called meridians. So each meridian is connected to a different organ, and so each pose stimulates a different organ. The idea is that when this energy flows throughout the body, it kind of acts as something to help with healthy function of all our different organs. So as you come into each of these poses, we want to try and find as much stillness as possible. So that means resisting the urge to fidget, just letting go into the pose, surrendering your body to the stretch. However, if something is uncomfortable and you need to adjust, then that is always okay. This is your halfway point. You've got just 1 more minute in this pose. Start to make your way out of the posture. Bring the knees back up to center. And just do what feels good for you right now. When you're ready, we're going to start to lengthen the legs out onto the mat completely. And for this one, it's likely that you won't need any props. So you can kind of just push them to one side so they're out of the way. But we're going to reach the arms up and overhead and take a hold of the right wrist with our left hand. This pose is banana pose. It's a side bend pose. So what we're going to do is start to shuffle our shoulders and our arms all the way over to the left side of the mat. So we start to create a curve through the right side of the body. The more you shuffle the shoulders over, the deeper the stretch you're going to create, but you can stay exactly where you are if you want to. If you wanted a little bit more, then you can take the feet and the ankles over to the left side of the mat as well. You might even cross your right ankle over your left if that feels good. And this is where we're going to stay. If it doesn't feel good with the arms up and overhead, then you can by all means bring the arms back down beside you. If you're reaching the arms up and overhead and you can feel them lifting away from the mat and that's a little bit uncomfortable, then you could pop a block underneath the arms for extra support. But as always, just start to soften, start to let go. You just want to make sure that your shoulders, both shoulder blades, are still connected to the mat, as well as the whole length of the spine and the sit bones. So the whole back body is still resting against the earth. With every inhale, feel the breath traveling up through the right side of the body, creating new length and new space. With every exhale, you might just notice yourself kind of releasing and softening into the pose a little bit more. We've reached our halfway point in this pose. Let's spend just one more minute here. Begin to shuffle the shoulders all the way back over to center. We'll bring the legs with us as well. And then take that second just to move the body. Again, there's no rush whatsoever, but when you're ready, we're going to take that over to the opposite side. So we'll start to lengthen the legs back out onto the mat if they're not already. Take a hold of the left wrist with your right hand and then move the shoulders over to the right side of your mat. So we're creating that curve through the left side of the body this time. Stay here if it feels good. Maybe take the feet over to the left side or the right side of the mat instead. You could even cross your left ankle over your right if that feels good. And again, kind of tune into your body, notice those different sensations. Often we can kind of force ourselves into a pose that we got into with ease on the opposite side without really thinking about it. So tune back into your body. It's likely that the shape that you create on this side is going to be a little bit different to the other. So yin is just one style of yoga that originates from China. And I'm sure we've all heard of yin and yang. Yang styles of yoga would be slightly more dynamic, so similar to something like a vinyasa or a hatha class. And the idea is that you practice both together to create balance and harmony within the body. Yin is considered soft, gentle, passive, slow. And yang would be considered dynamic, fast, active. So they're complete opposites, but they complement each other. Even within this yin class, there are moments of yang. So yin would be all of these poses that we hold stationary and find stillness in. And then yang would be the brief moments between the poses that we move the body in a slightly more dynamic way. We've reached our halfway point. This is your last minute in this pose. Start to make your way back to center. And bring some movement back into the body. Start to think about taking any last kind of stretch, posture, or movement that you feel like taking before we finish. And then when you're ready, we're going to slowly start to make our way up to a seated position on the mat. And we'll finish the practice of today in fish pose. So for this one, you're going to need your bolster. And we're just going to take the bolster behind us, long ways on the mat. Make sure that you're sitting right up against your bolster. We'll start by taking the soles of the feet on the mat and then slowly start to relax back onto your bolster, resting the arms either side of the body. If this doesn't feel good at all, then you can grab a block and you can slide the block underneath the sit bones, and that should reduce some of the pressure on the spine. But if you do want more, you can start to lengthen your legs out onto the mat. Either way, this will be our final resting pose. So find as much comfort as you can. Maybe shuffle the shoulders away from the ears. Soften the brows. And as we come to the end of our practice, this would be a nice time just to reflect. So that could be reflection on this class. Maybe it's a reflection on your day or your week. But give yourself just time to kind of look back. Quite often we get caught up in the fast-paced world that we live in. We don't always give ourselves time to really feel the emotions that we kind of go through every day. So cast your mind back to maybe something that made you smile or something that made you proud. And give yourself a second to almost relish in that moment. Allow yourself to really feel that positive emotion. Knowing that there's nothing left for you to do other than to rest in this pose, let's take these last few moments just to thank our bodies, be proud of our bodies, and honor our bodies. Feel free to stay in this pose for as long as you need. Thank you for your energy today. Namaste.